Welcome again. Good morning, everyone. I hope you had a nice night after our opening ceremony. We're very happy to start the conference now with our first keynote. But before I introduce you, Wolfgang Beutel, I want to say two things about why we're doing this and how we're doing it. So in the moment you have been seeing this, we have 4 rooms that can see what is happening here. So everyone can watch and follow the keynote. And in the end, as we said yesterday, or you probably came this morning and saw all the restoration works on the streets. So this is the reason why we could not have the big hall of the university for our keynote. We only learned this some months ago. So then we thought, okay, we make the problem an opportunity and see that the keynotes are not that hierarchical like they are normally. So after the keynote, every day we will have short time for talking with each other, to think about it, and we collect questions in each room. And then we will be linked to each room, and people from the other rooms can also pose questions, and we will answer it here. This is the plan for today, and I will guide you and lead you through this. So this morning, our starting keynote is Wolfgang Beutel from Leibniz University of Hanover, where he leads the Institute for Didactics of Democracy. In 1996, he received his doctorate from the University of Vienna with his study School as a Place of Political Education. He has been dealing with this topic of political education and democracy education for a very long time, for 3 decades. Until 2020, he was the managing director for the project called Democratically Acting, which he founded with Hildegard Hambrücher and Peter Fauser. Since 2020, he has been the project manager of the Monitor Democracy Education at Leibniz University Hanover. And he's a member, and this I found very interesting from the very beginning when I got to know him. Wolfgang Beutel is a member of the jury for the German School Prize. So he sees a lot of things that's happening now at the moment in German schools, and he will also show us one example. So I now give the floor to Wolfgang Beutel. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for this presentation of my biography in this theme, Challenge of Education for Democracy. That's the theme today I'm here to talk about. What we want to discuss today is divided into 5 parts. Part 1 is a question of why democracy education. Part 2, what can be said about this concept of democracy education. Part 3 focuses on the expectations and context surrounding the development of democracy education and the corresponding pedagogical practice. Part 4 discusses elements of the democracy education in schools. I would like to conclude in part 5 with several theses that revolve around that issue of democracy education in schools. First, regarding part 1. Why democracy education? There are a number of current reasons for this. The first lies in the rise of populism in Germany, Austria, and the countries of Central and Western Europe, the very same in the United States. The second relates to the current multi-crisis. These include migration, Russia's invasion of and the war in Ukraine, the massacre carried out by the Hamas organization, and the ensuing war in Gaza. Point 3, it then concerns the conflict with the West, invoked by Russian policy, which raises the question internationally of the shaping power and problem-solving capacity of liberal democracy. Point 4, we are dealing with the aftermath and consequences of COVID-19, which we have almost forgotten. Point 5, the ongoing and intensifying challenge of the climate crisis. Point 6, the changing culture of remembrance regarding the catastrophe of World War II and the Holocaust due to the loss of the last eyewitnesses. Hildegard Hambricher was one of this, for me and for many scholars and students. Point 7, and finally, the structural transformation of the public sphere, media, politics, aesthetics, everyday cultures and communication driven by digitalization, social media, and artificial intelligence. The next point gives us a positive argument. We naturally also have political initiatives. For example, in Germany, a recommendation from the Conference of Education Ministers in October 2018, as well as in the Austrian Ministry of Education through the Education Report 2025, which also addresses this topic. Finally, we have many civil society initiatives in the field of democracy supported by foundations and his citizens projects. The main reason, however, lies not only in all of the above, but above all in this. Democracy is not given. It is not a given. It must be learned, and schools have a significant role to play in this. Also. Here you see a study conducted last year and funded by the Robert Bosch Foundation, which surveyed teachers in schools, revealed what they considered to be the biggest problems in schools. First, the behavior of students. Second, the workload and lack of time. Third, the diversity of the student body. Fourth and fifth, misguided education policy and bureaucracy, as well as staff shortages. And finally, the parents. From the teacher's perspective, you see, democracy education is clearly not a major challenge. When asked whether more should be done regarding to democracy education at their schools, the following results emerges. 54% of teachers would like to see more democracy education at school, while the following obstacles are cited: lack of class time and a lack of subject-specific knowledge among the teaching staff. This desire to intensify democracy education is particularly evident in secondary schools, comprehensive schools, special education schools, and vocational schools. Sorry. Democracy education as a concept. In the German-speaking debate on discourse, we are surrounding the term democracy education as Demokratiebildung is relatively recent. The discussion regarding political education for democracy and civic education in the sense of learning by doing has been ongoing since the 1990s. The primary concern at present is that the term democracy education, also Demokratiebildung, must be clarified in terms of its meaning and underlying concepts. We must ask, what do we mean in schools when we call for democracy or democratic school development? We must also ask, what is meant by experience? What is meant, or what is the meaning of education in this context? And what goals do we aim to achieve with the concept of education? In the German language, there are at least 4 major terms that describe this phenomenon, each with a slightly different meaning. This is not the case in the English-speaking world. However, the question of democratic pedagogy and a school of democracy is highly contentious oder kontrovers, konfliktreich in Germany and is still the subject of intense debates. Many experts, teachers, and especially Parents and students are part of this discussion. They usually speak in this time of democracy education mit dem Wort Demokratiebildung. Muss das jetzt hier in Deutsch sagen, das ist ein bisschen speziell. And it sounds as everyone is thinking of the same thing. Yet, in most cases, the expectations and ideas surrounding it are actually quite different. Let's have a look at politics, KMK. That's our Conference of Educational Ministries. A major impetus came from the federal state model project Learning and Living Democracy from 2001 to 2007. Since then, school pedagogy has taken notice of this issue. The Conference of the Education Ministers in Germany subsequently adopted several recommendations and resolutions. The first point is KMK, Kultusminister Conference recommendation strengthening democracy education in the year 2009, followed by the revision and expansion 2018 under the title Democracy as a Goal, Subject and Practice of Historical and Political Education in Schools. It's a German sentence. A big term. Nobody can understand what they mean with it. Yes, it's so. One consequence of this symposia and the establishment of a working group on democracy education within the Conference of Education Ministers comprising 16 state representatives. Point 3, since then, there have been various decrees, conferences, programs, and recommendations at the state level. All of this is helpful in principle, but lacks substantial support from policymakers. In the summer of 2024, the Scientific Commission of the Conference of Education Ministers, a think tank of the education ministries, the members are educational researchers from different universities in Germany, surprises everyone with a statement on democracy education as a school's mission, the importance of history and political science, you see, history and political science, instruction, as well as the role of all subjects and school development. This came as a surprise to all stakeholders in academia and in the schools. But it is also a major disappointment. The think tank calls only for more class hours in politics and history. There's no innovation, no grand political appeal. What forces and influences are driving the current debates on democracy education? On the one hand, these are, of course, the interests and statements of education policy in Germany, namely those of the 16 state ministries of education. That's the blue field. On the other hand, there are expectations that the academic disciplines, namely the didactics of political education, but also empirical educational research and pedagogical practice in schools and youth work bring to the topic and the task. That's the yellow field. A major and important factor is practical experience, the possibilities and projects being tested in schools. That's the light blue field. And that's the other thing. The school is the school. That is why it is very important to learn what is happening in schools. How do schools respond to the challenges of democracy? How do schools respond to current issues in mainstream politics? What projects and ideas for student involvement and participation are embedded in the experiences, forms of action, and materials that emerge within the schools themselves? And that's one of the themes of the German School Award. The development of democracy in schools and education in Germany is strongly influenced by the distinction between several similar concepts. The discussion on democracy is based on a comprehensive understanding of the influences in socialization as well as the learning opportunities within educational institutions and democratic society as a whole. In this context, four distinct concepts have emerged. Since around 2000, we have been speaking of democracy pedagogy im Sinne von Demokratiepädagogik. Since around 2017, the term of democracy education, Demokratiebildung, has become established. In addition, the terms of learning democracy, Demokratielernen, and democratic education, Demokratieerziehung, have come into use. Added to this is democracy didactics, Demokratie didactic, the name of our institute in the university in Hanover. The international discussion uses the related terms civic education and citizenship education. These terms refer to the activation of the social and political role of individuals in society and, in the German language, encompass aspects of the civic education im Sinne von Bürgerbildung, without exactly mirroring or being synonymous with it. Let's take a closer look at these terms and the reasoning behind them. First, democratic education oder Demokratieerziehung. Education emphasizes the relationship between one person and another. It creates a balancing act between structure and potential development. Education addresses unequal power dynamics. On the one hand, there is the educator oder Erzieher. On the other, the learner or pupil or student, in Deutsch Schüler oder in früherer Zeit Zögling, also Erzieher und Zögling. Einer zieht, der andere wird gezogen. At the same time, education is an empirical reality between people. It is inevitable and functional for the relationship between generations. It is also a core concept in John Dewey's seminal work, Democracy and Education, which was published in Germany in 1927 under the title Demokratie und Erziehung, and continues to exert a major influence to this day. Dewey, Demokratie und Erziehung, or Democracy and Education, Learning by Doing Project Method. The second term is learning democracy, Demokratielernen. The connection between learning and democracy primarily refers to the acquisition of knowledge and skills. Learning democracy occurs when an intertwining of learning and the associated behavioral dispositions becomes visible within the democratic world. It is also significant here that in socialization research, not only individuals, but also groups and institutions can learn. For example, we speak of the learning school. This also refers to the whole school approach, the comprehensive implementation of the educational concept of education for sustainable development in accordance with Goal 4.7 of the UN 2030 Agenda with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Here is Goal 4, quality education. This implementation becomes a prime example of democratic school development and the learning of democracy by the school as a whole. It becomes the responsibility of the entire school, and all activities are conducted in a participatory and holistic manner under the guiding principle of sustainable development. The third term, democracy pedagogy oder Demokratiepädagogik in German. This is the oldest term in this discussion. The concept of democracy pedagogy focuses both on scholarship and research regarding to schools. However, it also refers to educational practice at the same time. Practice is much broader than science in this theme. Within it, teaching and learning take place in diverse ways every school today. Germany, for example, has 34,000 independent schools. Thousands of lessons are held daily, and around 11.5 million students attend them every day. Schools practice is by far the more influential sphere and the one that shapes the terms and concepts of democracy pedagogy, then educational science and political didactics. That is why our interests also lies in the many schools and their everyday activities. Pedagogy, too, can describe institutional related conditions. The great benefit of democracy pedagogy is that it keeps the entirety of educational institutions in view. At the heart of another meaning of democracy education, now the term of Demokratiebildung, lies the subject that changes in a planned and goal-oriented manner. That is, the individual human being, children, adolescents, adults, all who can participate in education. In German-speaking countries, the theory of education, Bildungstheorie ist der Begriff im Deutschen. The theory of education oder Bildungstheorie is one of the most influential theories regarding teaching and learning. This is particularly true for the subject of politics in German schools, where it's still taught today under the label political education, named in Deutsch politische Bildung. Immer politische Bildung, nicht politisches Lernen. Democracy education, or Demokratiebildung, on the other hand, has now become established within educational policy and youth social work. It is also regarded as a concept of integration between the subject of politics and democracy pedagogy within the socialization context of schools and other educational institutions. When one looks at this educational field today, the term democracy education immediately comes up. Also Demokratiebildung ist derzeit ein Modebegriff, muss man sogar sagen. Jeder spricht davon, niemand weiß, was er meint. Zu viel, aber that's a problem. However, especially in the German discussion, it quickly becomes apparent that there is still no fully developed and consensually accepted concept, nor is there sufficient research on democracy education im Sinne von Demokratiebildung. Another current observation is the abundance of popular science as well as educational science books, handbooks, and writings on the subject. Added to this are reports from commissions and from the world of foundations and think tanks. We have a lot of literature. What you see here is a map of the concepts to be described in the draft of Handbook for Democracy Education. It shows us many aspects of school that must be considered and described when we establish existing or still needed research and the associated practice of democracy education. The topics addressed here are not all conceivable. There are many other fields as well. It is clear that this includes fundamental aspects such as student involvement or participation in school activities and lessons. It also includes political subjects such as politics, history, geography. It is about democratic school development and learning through experience and engagement. It also concerns research and educational policy issues such as educational equity and addressing social inequality. Here we see the representation of democracy, education, and democracy in 3 fields. The first, democracy as a way of life. The second, democracy as a form of society or as a social system. And third, democracy as a form of government, which is very common in the German discussion, first presented by political scientist Gerhard Himmelmann in 2001, and at the same time, a highly acclaimed book. The distinction allows us to classify, at least in schools, the various possible fields of action, teaching methods, and learning methods. Democracy as a way of life focuses on the personal, social, and moral prerequisites for learning in every individual. It also involves recognizing the will to participate and the willingness to engage in democracy as an integral part of the persons themselves. It then comes down to the realization that each of us is part of the democratic whole, and the democracy is not about a dichotomy between the individual and the state. The freedom of the individual is manifested in the state community of democracy. We can say this is where the liberal, freedom-oriented idea in democracy educations comes to the fore. Democracy as a social system focuses on aspects such as the acceptance of diversity and the necessity of pluralism. This involves the realization that conflicts exist and that the particular strength of democracy lies in resolving these conflicts without violence, through compromise, and by taking minority perspectives into account. From an educational perspective, this involves learning about sociality, changing perspectives, and recognizing that fellow citizens in a democratic society may be different. Furthermore, this is where civil society, with its associations, projects, and initiatives, comes into the play. Democracy as a form of government addresses the need to forge consensus through politics and its institutions. This includes parliaments, federalism, the separation of powers, the necessary exercise and checks on power, popular sovereignty, the rule of law, and the decision-making procedures enshrining in the constitutions of liberal democracies. Here the Republican idea is also reflected in the teaching of democracy. Here you can see the Council of Europe's reference framework of competencies for democratic culture. It consolidates the European Union's political level objectives for the joint development of democratic education across EU member states. This framework, established in 2016, has garnered significant attention and addresses values, attitudes, skills, and fundamental knowledge, as well as critical thinking as a foundation for participation in democracy, as knowledge and critical understanding. The guiding concepts and ideas here relate to, first, citizenship. The term citizenship has 2 different meanings. First, the legal status of a person with regard to a state, which is proven by a passport. Second, the exercise of the rights and responsibilities of a citizen in participatory democratic society. A person can be a citizen of state without being involved in public affairs, while a person who is not a citizen in the legal sense can demonstrate active citizenship by engaging in various civic activities. In the context of the COE framework, the term citizenship refers to the active engagement of citizens with democratic processes and institutions, exercising their rights and responsibilities. The second idea is civic-mindedness. Civic-mindedness is an attitude towards others extending beyond family and friends. Democratic societies need community-oriented individuals who care about the well-being of the community. Mutual interests and trust, combined with shared goals and a variety of resources, foster commitment and engagement for the democracy. The third idea and concept, competence. Competence is the ability to mobilize and apply relevant values, attitudes, skills, knowledge in order to respond appropriately and effectively to the demands, challenges, and opportunities presented by a given context. In Deutschen würde man sagen, Kompetenz misst man durch Präsenz, durch Handeln. Now we turn to the elements of democracy education. 50 minutes. We see elements of democracy education that can be applied in schools. On the one hand, there is the school constitution, the school profile, or the school program. These refer to descriptions and objectives adopted by the governing bodies and the school, which may well include elements of democratic attitudes and participation. School programs have been common in schools in the Federal Republic of Germany since the 1980s and are now legally mandated in most federal states as a responsibility of the school assembly. The second is the Class Council. Over the past 20 years, the Class Council has become widely established as a main means of student-centered participation in schools. Starting in elementary school, it has now spread to secondary schools and even high schools. The Class Council traces its origin to the class assembly from the Freinet pedagogy. The Class Council is a dynamic body for co-determination and self-determination in which all members of a class can participate on an equal footing. It thrives on a clear division of roles and a defined structure designed to ensure the democratic quality of the votes and decisions made there. At the same time, it serves as an early tool for learning rules, roles, and orderly procedures, the core of democracy. Furthermore, there are discursive procedures, deliberation, weighing arguments, as well as training in discussion and debate through the Jugend debattiert competition, Wettbewerb Jugend debattiert von der Hertie, gemeinnützige Hertie-Stiftung, which supports a specific strategy for instructional preparation in the participation schools. Number 4 is the approach of strengthening moral judgment through the discussion of dilemma situations. This has also gained attention. This approach follows empirical psychological research from Jean Piaget to Lawrence Kohlberg, and it also realized in the just community approach. That is, the fundamental understanding of a school as a just community, eine gerechte Gemeinschaft. However, Lawrence Kohlberg itself consistently emphasized in his research that achieving a high level of moral judgment does not necessarily equate to a stable democratic value orientation. That's a problem. Number 5, student-led conflict resolution is also very widespread in German schools. This is a regulated procedure in which young students are trained to actively address conflicts within the school community through mediation. Number 6, the organized student body is now playing a greater role than before. That is, the forms of student participation and consultation in school affairs regulated by the school laws of the federal states. The major weakness of this approach remains in its limitation to consultation rights only. Number 7, a particular trend that is now becoming a reality in many schools is the modernization of student media. Whereas student newspapers once enjoyed a special reputation, one that even sparked conflicts with the school administrators, today the focus is on podcasts, student and school websites, and the school's public presence on social media. When this is skillfully combined with critical media education and media literacy, it offers a potential approach for student participation in the school's public image in a modern media and for a creative, constructive dialogue between students and teachers in the realm of digital technology. Number 8, a fundamental element of any democratic school development is the establishment of project-based learning and interdisciplinary learning within broader contexts. That is, in the allocation of time within the school schedule. This also includes content-based collaboration between different subject areas on overarching themes such as sustainable development. Such projects also offer the opportunity to address big picture political issues that concern and possibly even frighten young people and children today. Furthermore, projects enable collaboration with partners in local or broader networks, such as the German School Award. Number 9, service learning has become widely adopted. Learning through engagement demonstrates a method that combines learning about a topic of local democracy in the classroom with corresponding engagement in a local social institution. Number 10, further aspects of practical democracy education involve opening up the classroom to opportunities for democratic development. This includes an error-tolerant classroom climate. This is reflected in a willingness to understand why mistakes may occur when working on subject-specific tasks and to seek to understand the way to the mistakes. Number 11, this also includes a transparent, fair and student co-determined assessment of performance, Leistungsbeurteilung, zusammen mit den Lernenden. Number 12, in addition, there are resources available in German-speaking countries to support democratic school development. This includes the Quality Framework for Democracy Education. It contains guidelines for a democracy audit for schools. This enables schools to identify starting points and existing strengths for their democratic development. A catalogue of characteristics for democratic schools has also been developed and is available online. It allows the quality assessment and counseling of schools by the state quality agencies to be linked to the era of democratic school quality. You see the cover on the right side above. At the same time, I must emphasize, democratic school development is a lengthy process. It requires constant nurturing and adaptation to current circumstances. Above all, it requires the participation of as many school groups as possible. It needs the students, the parents, the teaching staff, the steering committee and, if possible, representatives of the school authorities and, where applicable, the booster clubs, Fördervereine und ähnliches, which the majority of schools now have. Short yeah, perspective to an example for a democratic school. It's the GSO Bremen, Gesamtschule Bremen Ost. This is an integrated comprehensive school founded in 1972 with full day care operated by the state and city-state of Bremen, kleinste Bundesland, Zwei-Städte-Staat. It is located in the eastern part of the city in the Teneva district. This is a district with challenging infrastructure and social problems. This school was founded according to the model of the time for a large school serving a densely populated district. It had up to 2,400 students at the start. After about 30 years, the building was in need of renovation. And the student population had also declined significantly. The school, or rather the school building, was therefore renovated and remodeled from 2002 to 2007. Today, the school once again has 1,400 students. In connection with this renovation, a decision was made to establish a rehearsal and recording hall within the school premises for the Deutsche Kammerphilharmonie Bremen, an orchestra that you will know, that was then settling in Bremen and has since become world-renowned, I think. Since then, the school and orchestra members have offered numerous music projects with participatory elements. This includes instrumental lessons taught by the orchestra members, the orchestra stage production Melodie des Lebens, featuring students, bands, and students, a neighborhood opera every 2 years in Bremen-Teneva under the motto, "The choice is yours" oder "Du hast die Wahl", and brand new The Club 443 Hertz, where modern electronic club music interacts with the orchestral offerings. In addition, the school has more than 20 other partner organizations. Among the most significant are the Kunsthalle Bremen, the Municipal Focke Museum, a cultural museum in Bremen, and the Bundesliga Club, SV Werder Bremen. Yeah. Over the past 20 years, the school has systematically expanded both its democratic education program and its artistic program. It has a teacher serving as a coordinator for democratic school development, active project work with its many extracurricular partners, and a strong connections to other schools' commitment to ongoing development. About 8 years ago, the school was also the recipient of the German School Award. The democratic education project work was evaluated, presented, and published as part of a scientific study, Wolfram Stein, 2014. And the leader of this school is a teacher in music and politics. And he came out of Sweden. Yeah, it's interesting. It is clear that not all schools can act in this way. It is equally clear that the development just outlined in brief also owes much to chance, favorable decisions, and an attentive leadership team during the school's restructuring period. Nevertheless, this example demonstrates a wealth of opportunities within regular school operations to pursue democratic school development, to open the school to students in a participatory manner, and to successfully and systematically combine cultural education with democratic education. Now I see what the time says. Go to my thesis. Okay? Thesis for to discuss. Number one. Good and professionally grounded forms of democratization, first and foremost, and in many areas includes the participation of children and young people in schools. We describe this form of participatory democratization, which combines learning with engagement, using the term democracy education. Und wir sagen Democracy Education im Sinne von Demokratiepädagogik. Die Politik spricht von Demokratiebildung. What's that?
Just go on. It's fine.
Oh. Okay. Wackelkontakt nennt man sowas. I will go to the... The second thesis. School is compulsory. It reaches all children and young people. It is based on democratically legitimized legislation in parliaments. Schools is therefore, according to the administration, fundamentally democratic. At the same time, however, this alone does not mean that democratic action takes place there. All school laws in Germany require all professionals working in schools to facilitate the learning of democracy, not only teachers for politics or history. There is a tension inherent in the institution of school itself. It is not designed for democracy, nor does it arise from a democratic impulse. It is a hierarchical institution and must therefore be cultivated as an atmosphere rich in democratic values as well as a learning and living environment. Number 5, democracy is closer to children and young people today than ever before. Voting age reform, voting from age 16 in state and local elections, children's rights and human rights, digital media, social media apps, youth protests such as Fridays for Future. These forms of expression suggest a constant engagement with the major issues in politics. And number 6, democracy education requires a strong teacher training at all stages. This applies not only to the departments of politics and history, but to all academic disciplines and found national pedagogical training. Number 7, in Germany, policymakers, in this case the state ministers in the KMK, rely on schools and teachers to fulfill the task of shaping the school as a democratic learning environment. It's your task, they say. Therefore, the following applies. At present, democratic school development is primarily a matter of school practice. Implementation lies with the schools themselves and must be supported by the professionalism of the full-time teachers working there. It follows that democratic school development and the establishment of a democratic school culture are professionally defined tasks to be carried out in individual schools, not merely a matter of choice for school groups that can be made or not. Number 10, democracy education is given too little importance in the overall educational policy landscape, even though the issues discussed there, like inclusion, teaching quality, teacher professionalism, graduation certificates, high dropout rates without diploma, educational equity through disadvantage compensation, and the other things like digitalizations. These all correspond to the democratic quality of schools. Number 11, we need greater recognition of good pedagogical practice, because even educational sciences cannot speak without practice. School practice has more experience and project-based qualities than science, administrations, and politics realize. And the last thesis. That is why democracy education requires a strengthening of the associated research. Over the past decades, research in democracy education and the development based on it has resembled more of a scramble for third-party funding than a substantive research and development strategy. At last, one final thought. You ask about ways to strengthen and to advance democracy. This is urgently needed. You are using terms like participation, diversity, and social cohesion. Schools can and must contribute to this in all areas of education and across all subjects. But you must consider that schools cannot solve the challenges and problems facing politics. The irresponsible behavior of the adult generation, their simply wrong decisions in politics, leads to populism, autocracy, exclusion, and violence. But the young people cannot solve what the adults have caused. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hello, am I on? Yep. Yeah. So thank you very much. Now starts our small time, like 6 or 7 minutes. We will ask you now to talk to each other, 2, 3, or 4 people, just with each other where you're sitting. And in about 6 minutes, I, in this room, and in about 6 minutes, also the chairs in the other rooms, will ask you which questions you have. And then we will connect everybody with each other. We will start with room 2, then room 3, then room 4 for the questions. And the last room will be this one, because you had the opportunity to listen here directly. So please now have like 5 or 6 minutes for a talk, and then I will call you back again to the audience. So we will slowly come to an end of this first discussion you just had with your colleagues. And as I said, you might feel a little bit like in the Eurovision Song Contest now. We switch to room number 3. It's the Ölberger Studio with Wilfried the chair. Can we have your questions?
Oh, yeah, can you hear us? There are questions here. You know, in Vienna we will host the Eurovision Song Contest in May, so we are rehearsing for that. That's why we do that. We have 1 or 2 or even 3 questions. But we start with one, please.
Do you understand me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's provoked me to think about the concept of democratic education, actually. And I'm asking myself if a central assumption or premise of your presentation might be wrong, namely that we need one general definition of the concept of democratic education in order to understand this. That I suppose is the reason why you assume that it might be unclear that democratic education actually means. And I think that people do know actually what democratic education means in the context of their projects, their usage of the languages. So if you think it is otherwise, I would be interested in knowing your take on the general definition of the concept of democratic education. Was clear.
Also, es ist eine Frage der Entscheidung, a question for decision. My position is liberal democracy, Herrschaft des Rechts.
The master of, or the Lord over all rights.
And participation in the society and wie soll man das sagen? Für die Schule heißt das Die Schülerinnen und Schüler müssen mitwirken können in viel mehr, als dies bislang der Fall ist bei Entscheidungen im Unterricht.
Yeah, so that means that in the schools, the students have to be able to contribute a lot more and have more the opportunity for their voices to be heard more and to decide about things that happen in the school.
Die Zeitpunkte, wann sie Prüfungen haben möchten.
For example, when they would like to have their tests,
Die Art und Weise der Prüfung.
how the test will be conducted, what type of test will be conducted.
Ja, also zwischen Lehrenden und Schülern gemeinsam festzustellen, wann man soweit ist, eine Leistung zu erbringen, auch in der Demokratie natürlich. Und das ist Mitbestimmung im Unterricht. Das gibt es noch viel zu wenig.
That teachers and students can together decide when it's the appropriate time to have a test or to measure their achievements, and that happens much too seldom.
Und ein anderer Gedanke oder ein anderes wichtiges Moment der Definition ist Verantwortung für alles, was wir in unserer Gesellschaft erreichen oder eben auch nicht.
And that we also have to carry the responsibility together of everything that we accomplish in our society together.
Okay, so thank you. I think we also will now have a question from room 4, if this is possible. So for the moment, we take one question from each room. Room 4.
Yes, thank you very much. So first of all, thank you for your presentation. And democratically, we decided that I can ask the question. We discussed about the legislation and dare I say it, the German-centric nature of this presentation. So I would leave this out of the question that I will ask now. If we have to talk about democracy in our schools, it's a very thin line to go from democracy to politics. We know that especially in our education, as we're in higher arts education, it's a very politically loaded kind of education. And we would like to know if how can we manage this tension between talking about democracy and the act of doing politics.
Also
Demokratiebildung betreiben, ohne politisch
das geht nicht.
sein. Okay, dann.
That is impossible. Theodor Adorno has said, das Private ist politisch. The private life is a political life. Das geht sehr weit. Das geht zu weit. Aber im Grunde ist es richtig. Wir sind Teil der Demokratie und können uns der nicht entziehen. Und damit sind wir auch Teil der Politik. Und Demokratie ist natürlich auch Politik, aber nicht jede Politik ist Demokratie, wie wir gerade sehen.
So all democracy is political, but not every form of politics is democratic. And in a democracy, it's not possible just to say, I'm not going to be involved, I'm going to step back, but actually it's impossible to separate democracy and politics.
Ein Gedanke noch. In Deutschland hat man gerne, hier ist der Staat, da bin ich, that's a difference, and der Staat muss liefern, das wird gerade oft gesagt. Aber er ist keine Firma. Wir sind Teil ob wir wollen oder nicht, wir sind ein Teil davon.
Yeah, so it's often the case, at least in Germany, that it's seen as the state is here and I'm here as a private person, but actually we're part of the state, we're not separate. It's not like we can sit and wait for the state to deliver something, but we're active parts of it.
Ich würde noch nach dem Überwältigungsgebot, also
das
steckt schon drinnen, ne? Was darf ich dann? Darf ich politisch sein als Lehrer?
So there is the question of the Überwältigungsgebot, which is
Nice.
Which is so mit dem that they can't that you can't overwhelm with your point of view, that you have to be moderate about it.
First part of the answer. Es gibt kein Überwältigungsverbot.
There isn't one, he says.
Es gibt nur das Gebot, die politischen Angebote alle vorzustellen. Jeder Lehrer ist ein Homo politicus, das ist doch klar, und Jugend braucht Vorbilder.
Yeah. It's the job of the teacher to present a wide spectrum of political viewpoints and to be a homo politicus. Yeah.
Man darf nur nicht für eine Partei werben. So.
You can't just say, this is the party to vote for, this is the good party.
Thank you. So we again will try Clara Schumann. Can we have a connection to the room of Clara Schumann?
Hello, hello, 1, 2. This is Clara Schumann. Yes? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the concept. And we've been trying to talk about how it relates to culture and democratization of culture or cultural democracy, and which of course affects like what we teach. Is it pupils' music or the teacher's music, and how we teach it? And we would like to have your feedback on that, on how that relates to democracy in schools today when it really comes to the subject of music.
Mitbestimmung bei der Auswahl der Dinge, die man behandelt, im Rahmen natürlich der curricularen Vorgaben.
That the students can also have a voice in deciding which music will be taught or learned within the curriculum.
Aufeinander hören. Eine bekannte kurze Definition of democracy ist Verstehen und Verständigung.
A definition of democracy is, oh, that's difficult. Understanding each other and in dialogue with each other. And yeah, sorry, what was the first part? Okay, all right, that's it.
Oder?
Okay.
So then one more from Clara Schumann, as we have you already. Question?
Hello, we have a question. Does the German government monitor the integration of the democratic education? And if so, how do they do that? How do they do that?
Überwacht oder reguliert, dass die deutsche Staat, dass diese Demokratiebildung eigentlich stattfindet. Und wenn ja, dann wie machen Sie das?
Sie möchten, dass
Mikrofon?
Sie möchten, dass Sie das machen, dass die Lehrerinnen und Lehrer und die Schulen diese Aufgabe übernehmen. Das finden Sie gut. Es gibt keine Stellen, keine Mittel, kein Geld, keine Forschung dafür, aber es gibt die Appelle, die Schule muss zur Demokratie erziehen. Und
It's an appeal. It's not officially monitored
Yes.
by the state. It's an appeal to the various schools that they monitor it themselves, and also that they do it simply.
Und das führt in einem a federal state dazu, dass es in Bayern eine andere Erwartung gibt als in Bremen.
But what that means then is, for example, in Germany, where there are 16 states, that there are different expectations and different practices in each state.
Thank you so much. So now I come to our room, to Fanny Hensel. Who would like to pose a question? I have one here.
Okay. Thank you very much. I wrote it down. Democracy education emphasizes participation and shared decision-making. But democracy also has an inherent limiting factor. The majority can make poor or even destructive choices, as we see in the rise of populism. And my question is, how do you see this in the tension reflected in music education? And how can music education help this process?
Die Mehrheit kann schlechte Entscheidungen treffen. Und was ist die Spannungsfeld da in Music Education? Wie kann das aussehen, um das zu lösen?
Also Demokratie ist eben nicht nur Mehrheit. Das ist falsch. Mehrheit ist ein Punkt für Entscheidungen in der Demokratie, aber
Yeah. So democracy is more than majority. That's one important point, or one important way that decisions are made, but it's not the only one.
ebenso wie Partizipation per se noch nicht, also für sich noch nicht Demokratie ist. Man kann auch an schlechten Entscheidungen partizipieren. Man kann an einer autoritären Struktur teilnehmen und partizipieren. Also wir müssen das immer in den normativen Kontext von Menschenrechten, Gültigkeit des Rechts, von Entscheidungen durch Mehrheit, die man nur akzeptieren kann, wenn Minderheiten und ihre Interessen berücksichtigt sind.
Yeah, so participation is not inherently democratic because you can also participate in a bad system. And so it has to do, I lost my train of thought. What was that after that?
Also
Yeah. So it has to be in the context of the common good, the common good, and also respect for minorities. Yes. That is democracy when when there's the common good is in the center. Yeah. Yes.
Maybe one more. The last one. No. Okay. So then, we are very happy and thankful that you have been our guest and answering also questions and showing us so much about the central concept of this conference. And we're very happy. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, too.
I will only, before you now start to have your coffee break, I will just say some things. You realize that the campus, we have a lot of space, and for lunch, as you all have already heard at the registration, we have two sites. You have on your bonus that you have a little paper where you should go for lunch. It's either in the area of where you have registered or over there at the Mensa. You can also take your things and sit outside and bring it back afterwards. There are nice photos and everything in the garden. That's the one thing. Also, the coffee breaks will be in these two areas. So also right now, you could choose to which you go. Whenever there is changes in the program, please always look at the current version of the conf tool. So the conf tool is the tool that we keep up to date. And as you will need a lot of, very much your mobile phones, there's also in all the rooms there are sockets, more sockets, if you need more electricity during the day. So I think, yeah. And then just one more thing, tonight is the concert. And it's, of course, you have every evening, we have so much program, but I still wanted to say that it's going to be a very interesting concert. On the one hand, you will be in the Konzerthaus of Vienna in the Fin de Siècle building in the Mozartsaal. So it's, on the one hand, it's also great to just be there. And there will be very different ways of musicking there. There will be children from schools rapping their own texts. There will be an orchestra called Colorage coming from Ludwigshafen, thank you, in Germany. And they are working together with musicians from all over the places, and they have hybrid music making. They have invented their own styles, and they will also explain what kind of music it is and how it developed. So I hope to see you also there at the concert. Now have some nice coffee.